Being in a rut sucks. And today we're gonna be talking about how to get out of a rut because I just was in one and I just know how annoying it is to be in a rut. So I think if I can help anyone start to get out of one, I would love to. And even if you're not in a rut right now, you can save this video for later, or you can just jot down some notes for the next time you fall into one if you do. I hope you don't because it sucks, but just in case, preparation is always good. So what is a rut? A rut is a state of stagnation where things just don't feel good. They feel very repetitive. You just feel stuck, like you want to do something else but nothing else is happening. Your routine just does not feel fulfilling. You don't feel fulfilled. Your life might seem pretty bleak. I had this when I was in college. There was a time my days seemed so much the same and they had so little joy. I was like, what is the point? And then that sent me into like an existential thing. But a rut just feels very bleh. In your body, it can feel heavy. You feel very sluggish. Even doing the smallest, simplest things just exhaust you. It feels as if your body is made of sand. You want to move, but you can't. You just feel exhausted no matter how much rest you get. You could get 9 hours of sleep and wake up and still feel exhausted. So here are some things that happened before I fell into this rut, and then I fell into a little bit of a anxiety-induced spiral plus rut. Basically, one, I felt very stagnant in LA, so I moved. We are not in LA anymore, which is exciting. I just felt like all my days were very similar, and I also felt like I couldn't go anywhere because there's so much traffic in LA, and like where I lived, you can walk, but you can't really walk anywhere. You know, like you can just like walk around the neighborhood, and I just felt very trapped sometimes. Like I felt like if I wanted to do something, I had to plan my whole day around hours of traffic. LA has a lot of great things, and it also has a lot of things that are difficult, and I just felt like I needed something new because I didn't feel good there anymore. I just one day woke up and I feel like I had no community, and I didn't have that many people either. I mean, the people that I did have are like the most wonderful people, but outside of that, I just felt, I don't know, like I just felt trapped, and my life was very bleak and not full of joy. Just the environment, I would just wake up and I always felt very anxious in LA. And I realized this when I went to go somewhere else, like, whoa, I really do have a lot of anxiety tied to just being in LA. When I left LA, I felt very different. So that was my decision. I was like, you know what, we're gonna move. And let me just tell you guys some things that happened before the move. And this is what kind of sent me into the second rut. So I got food poisoning. The food poisoning sucks. Okay, if you've ever had food poisoning, I am so sorry because food poisoning, I thought I was gonna die. Like I literally thought I was gonna die because I could not breathe because I was like so much. I was like, okay, this is the end. Like, this is it. So that was one thing. The other thing was that LA was having a lot of fires. If you look at the news at all, you've probably seen this. There was a lot of fires. And so there was a lot of smoke in the air and just a lot of anxiety, like more than usual, which is completely understandable because it's a very hard thing to go through for a lot of people. And it definitely affected me. I felt very anxious and I felt very sad, and it was a lot emotionally. And then I moved and I did not prepare myself to move, and I always do this because moving triggers a fight, flight, or freeze response in me. It just does. I'm not going to go into the full story, but I moved a lot when I was younger, and so I think that when I move, I still have that like anxiety-induced feeling. Okay, now to the steps of how to get out of a rut. So first of all, one of the most helpful things, and it sounds so simple, but it really does help, is clean up your space. When you clean up your space physically, it actually helps clear out your mind mentally. So it's like a 2-in-1. The second thing is go outside. Every time I feel very, very anxious, the moment I step outside, I feel better. Just being outside and breathing in the fresh air and seeing whatever's up in the sky that day, whether it be sun or clouds, whatever it is, honestly, it makes me feel so much better. It is not natural for us to stay inside all day. Like that is not in our beings. Whenever you feel just very in a rut, and sometimes that sends people to just kind of, you know, lay down and watch shows, and I do that too. But the moment that I can get outside, I do start to feel a lot better. Number 3 is listen to podcasts about things that interest you. So for me, I love listening to Diary of a CEO, How I Built This, because I just love innovation motivation in listening to business and things people have created, but it can be whatever you're interested in. I would say probably stay away from like the murder podcast because that might cause you some anxiety. I know people find them very interesting, but I don't know. I really don't know if that's the best thing to do, but if it works for you, definitely do it. You know, I'm not gonna say don't do that, but just find something you're interested in and listen to those podcasts. Some other ones that I really like is the Ritual podcast. He always has great guests on, and I love the way that his are very like mellow. There's not a ton of music, like it's just very mellow conversations. And the Mel Robbins podcast is great. She like reminds me of a mom. Like I feel like she's like my internet mom or something. So listening to her always cheers me up. Number 4 is read books. For me personally, when I'm in a rut, I love to read self-help books and nonfiction books or books about business, just anything that really interests me. Kind of same thing back to the podcast, but honestly, I will say any book that will interest you enough to keep reading it is good because that will keep you away from your phone. And when you're in a rut, it is very easy to just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll, but that is making it worse. So if you can pick up a book that interests you and just start reading it, and then once you get into the flow state of reading, it really does help. It really does help, and it really helps you get away from the screens. Number 5 is be curious, not frustrated. So anytime you're feeling just bleh in life, just be curious. Just ask yourself, you know, why am I feeling this way? Or what in my routine kind of drains me? Just ask yourself a ton of questions and don't get frustrated. Like you cannot be angry at being in a rut. It's like you can't be angry at these negative emotions. All you can do is help soothe them and just start asking more questions. Like, you know, kids, they are so good at just asking why, because they're so curious. But as we get older, we start to become less curious, and I think that is a huge issue, but we will talk about that in another video. Just be curious and try to not get frustrated with yourself. Just sit there and think, okay, what happened before I got into this little rut of mine? Is there anything that I can change today? Is there anything in my schedule that I can remove that is causing me to feel this way? Is there anything I can add to make my days better? Just anything you can think of, and don't be judgmental towards yourself. Number 6 is create anything, any creative interest you have. Even if you don't have a creative interest, just pick up a pen and paper and just start drawing. It doesn't have to be good. No one is gonna see it, it's just for you. But creativity is very, very helpful. I think a lot of times in today's world, what causes a rut is anxiety. And when you're being creative, you can't also be anxious. So that is a little hack. And I will talk about this more in another video, but creativity is a great way to get out of the anxiety state and into a creative state. And then from that, a lot can come. A lot can come. We are gonna talk about this in another video in way more detail because this is very important, but I will say it is very helpful. And if you're like, well, I don't really know what to do, I'm not a super creative person. First of all, yes you are. Yes you are. You are a creative person. We are all creative beings, but I do have some tips. So some questions you can ask yourself are, what's something I've never questioned before that I should? Just think about things that just happen, but you've never really asked, okay, why does that happen? Another good question is, if I had to explain something I love to someone who's never experienced it, how would I explain it? This is really good. For me, that would be running. You know, like I can really go into detail about running. Another good question is, if this moment in my life was a scene in a movie, how would I describe it? And there's lots more questions. These are just a few that can kind of spark some ideas or interest or lead you to more questions to ask. But yeah, just ask yourself these, write them down, write a little story, whatever you want to do. Just find something that's creative. I think writing is very helpful, drawing is very helpful, art is very helpful, like painting. Another thing I do is I go on walks and I look at like different objects and I'm like, oh, and I just ask myself, I wonder who created this, or when did this like come into existence? Because a lot of stuff that we have today, we did not have 100 years ago. So it's really fun to just like ask yourself. And then I'll be like, okay, if I was to build a business producing this thing, like what would I do? How would I make it different? Just a ton of different questions, because again, that goes back to curiosity, which is linked to creativity. So it's all tied in. Number 7 is to write. I know that when you're in a rut, this can be very hard. It is very hard for me too, because writing seems like such a big thing to do. But writing will really, really, really help because it just clears it all out. Just write down everything you're thinking, every anxious thought you have, everything you need to do, just get it on paper, because because that allows your brain to let go of that information and those repetitive thoughts. So then you can start to think more clearly. Writing, always good. Number 8 is stretch and do yoga if you can. Stretching is so good for you. Same thing with yoga, they're very similar. The reason it's good for you is because it helps release stored emotion and tension in your body. Sometimes when I stretch, I will think that I'm like really tired, and then I stretch and all of a sudden I have all this energy. It's because there's so much stored in your body, and if you don't get it out, it just stays there. So if you're feeling very tight or very tired, try stretching, honestly. And if you don't know what stretches to do, just go on Pinterest or even Google and just look up stretches for releasing emotions, and you will get so many ideas. People have already done the research for this, so it's very simple. It's just a quick Google search, and you can do it anywhere. You can do it in your bedroom, in your living room, outside, wherever you are. Number 9 is to connect with people. Call an old friend, call a family member, or go somewhere where there's new people that you can talk to. But talking to people will really help because that pulls us out of ourselves. And when we can focus on other people, I think it eases a lot of emotions because we're not just thinking about, oh my gosh, this is happening to me and this is happening to no. And you come out of the idea of just I, and you start to be more in a community, just thinking about other people. So it's always good if you can to connect with other people when you're feeling in these little down stages. And number 10, I had to put it on the list, but is to meditate. I have a great new app for meditation. So I already have Balance. I just got this one called Open. It's new and I love it. I love trying out new meditations, and I think they're really good, and they always have a daily one. So if you need a meditation app, Open is very good. And if you don't want to get an app, just go on YouTube and search up meditation, and a ton of different ones will come up. Or if you have something that you want to meditate on more specifically, look that up. Whatever it is, there is a lot of resources for meditation these days. Now I'm going to share with you guys some of the books that helped me get out of a rut. So in this current rut, the book that really helped me was Beyond Anxiety by Martha Bett. I heard her on someone's podcast. I just loved everything she said. And then I went on Amazon and I tried to order her book, but it was back ordered. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll get it another day. But then I went into Target and there was one book left of the book I wanted. So I got it. I was like, this is meant to be. And I'm pretty much done with it. I read it so fast because it's so good and helpful. Anyone who's struggling with anxiety, or even just wanting to understand anxiety because maybe you have loved ones that struggle with it, highly recommend the book. Any of the Joe Dispenza books always help me feel better, but especially Becoming Supernatural and Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. He really focuses on like detaching from your body and just like being and energy and like the quantum field. And I feel like whenever I read about that stuff, I start to feel like more connected to it, and then that really helps me like get out of my body. It's kind of weird, but honestly anything Joe Dispenza is really good. So if you're feeling down, or you're feeling lost, or you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling in a rut or depressed, honestly anything, I think that he is really good at helping people get out of that stage that they're in that they don't want to be in. I also like The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin because it's very easy to read, but it has such good information. And then I'm also reading Sapiens right now, which is really interesting. I love history and I love just learning how humans became to be humans. And I think that once you learn more about why we are the way we are, it helps you change the things that you don't like about the way that maybe you are. So yes, Sapiens, very good book. I'm not very far in it, but it's been a good read so far. Okay, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're in a rut, I hope that these things help. They definitely help me, and I really do think that they will help you too. Or if you're not in a rut, maybe send it to someone you love if you know that they're in a rut, because being in a rut sucks. None of us want to be there. Yeah. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see y'all very soon. Bye!